as someone who has come to this country, were you ever afraid, Emmanuel, of maybe saying or doing something that would, you know, yeah.
Yes, and I did do and said something.
Yeah, right, yeah. I think that's natural. I mean, even on short-term missions, that's a concern, isn't it? You go someplace, you go even to someplace that you think is somewhat similar to, you know, you may be going to another part of the country. There are probably going to be things you want to avoid saying if you can. If you don't know about them, though, and that's why I want to emphasize this word ignorance here. Ignorance, I think all too often we think of as a put-down word. I'm so ignorant. Ignorant just means what? You don't know. Don't know. Can you know what you don't know? No. I mean, if you don't know it, you don't know it. And so it may be possible that you say or do things literally out of ignorance that might end up being offensive to someone. Is that a possibility?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, has that happened to you?
Yes.
Probably. So, you know, it's something that can happen. Now, I want to talk about the word offend a little bit too. That's a word we throw out a lot. You know, oh, that offended me. You know, oh, what that, you know, the way they you know, what they said in the assembly this morning, that offended me. When you offend someone, have you harmed them or hurt them? Hurt. Okay, and I'm going with, you know, I don't know if we have a differentiation between harm and hurt, but in conversations like this, I'd say there's a difference between hurting someone and harming someone. Harming someone, damage has been done. Hurt has more to do with my feelings have been hurt. Can we get over that?
Yes.
If someone harms you, like, you know, terrible example, but you know, if someone were to come in and strike me or something, first of all, if it had been one of my freshman classes the last few years, there would have been cheers. But if someone just comes in and that is potentially very harmful. Okay, in a lot of ways, that's harmful. If someone comes in and says something negative, I'm going to be hurt, but I might not necessarily be harmed. I can be if I take it to heart, you know, that sort of thing, but I won't necessarily be anything more than hurt by that. And I'm just, sometimes when we say we have offended someone out of ignorance, that maybe you have said something to someone of another culture, is it possible that you have hurt them? Yes. But you maybe have not done harm, and hopefully they can see that. Because this is inevitable, that when you are with someone who is not like you, that you are going to say or do something out of ignorance, just not knowing, that is going to be offensive, potentially offensive. But does it have to be harmful? No. Yeah, Billy.
In our Be the Bridge meetings, we break down in small groups, and I always ask, we're in different cultures, I always ask, what is the word or a word that your particular race would not like to be addressed as, such as myself or anyone else? And so different one says, one of the brothers was talking about his upbringing, and he mentioned the word colored. And we were talking, and I said, well, by the way, brother, that word colored is offensive. It's not, it doesn't do harm, but it's offensive.
Right.
And he said, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And that's why it's good to talk like groups like this.
Yeah.
We often ask ourselves what word or phrase that we do not like to be characterized as. You know, that way we learn we're not offended. And it's totally out of ignorance too, though.
Yeah.
And no harm with that.
Right. Yeah, Luke.
I didn't think about it last week, but this week, especially like people of a certain, that have gone through the same thing, like cancer. It's like if someone didn't know that you had cancer or a tumor, it's like someone like jokingly said like, "What's wrong with you? Did you have cancer or something?" And then you do, and then you're sort of offended by it.
Right.
It's like if you were, like if you had a stutter or a speech impediment or something like that, or I mean even up to the point of, I don't know if you can say mentally handicapped. Like people would joke around with that, and they might actually have a mental damage, and so that'd be offensive. Almost, I mean, I would say that could be harmful because they could take it that seriously.
Right.
It's true.
Yeah, and that's the key. Are they taking it?
Yeah.
You know, if it goes from here to here, you know, kind of rests in your heart. Yeah, Manuel.
From my experience, both coming here and also when missionaries come over there, most people don't get offended by your words of action. They give you grace.
Yeah.
But there are two things that brings up the offense. One, either the attitude of not caring and say why you're offended over that.
Right.
And two, when they even correct you, you insist on still saying or doing what I
Right.
just pointed out
Right.
to you. So a lot of people give me grace and pointed out that we don't say this, we don't do this. But a lot of times when we have missionaries come from the West, unfortunately, and we try to let them know that, well, you can't do this here. The attitude of, why would you tell me? I mean,
Right.
we
Don't tell me my job.
don't tell me what to, yeah.
Don't tell me how to do my job.
So I've seen a lot of Americans give grace
Yeah.
here for when you mess up what you do.
I'm glad to hear that, because I've also heard just the opposite from some people who've said, you know, my experience, not with everybody, obviously, but there are just some Americans whose attitude is, well, you should have known, you know, almost like the onus was on the other person to figure out how to act like a good American before they ever came here. You know, it's like, no, that doesn't make sense.
Especially when you know your heart.
Right.
And that's why this group is good. If you know the person concerned, you know that they're just ignorant, we can correct them. But if it comes from a very vile heart, then we know this is not just some accident of ignorance, or you choose to remain ignorant.
Right.
And that's why I agree with Billy that this group, you know, tying into what you said last week, someone was asking, why do we need to discuss these things? Well, it's for this reason, for you to walk out of your, walk away from your ignorance, knowing what to do.
And that gets us into, you know, I want to make sure we circle back, so I want to put a peg here. Just the idea of do we just let our fear of offending someone out of ignorance, do we let that become a barrier? And I think, you know, some people though think, well, it'd be better if I just don't even approach that person because I might inadvertently say something that would be offensive. Is that really the case? I want us to come back to that. Sharon?
I was just gonna say what Billy said about the term colored. Some of that has evolved, and especially people that are old, I mean, way back when, and the terms have changed. And I was gonna say, I just heard recently, I had Mormon neighbors. I love those people. I've stayed with them rather than my relatives sometimes when we've gone back to our hometown. But I've heard now that they don't want to be called Mormon. They want to be called saints or something like that. But I just heard that recently, and I think that it's so hard to break that habit because I've just always referred to them. I'm saying terms change too. And also I was thinking about this, it's very, when you went around the states, we can very much generalize about different states. We talk about the left coast, and we talk about, of course, politically, we do that. We make generalizations, that's what I'm saying.
Sure.
Definitely.
I was gonna say, to that point, the other thing I've seen, that I've run across is, people assuming ignorance. Not like you say something and then they realize you're ignorant, they just automatically assume that you have no idea, you know, what that person struggles with or goes through. I had multiple experiences in college where, you know, I'd be in the middle of a class, and I don't know if y'all know me, but I don't have a problem raising my hand and having a counterpoint. Turns out some college professors don't like that. But You know, I had some students who would literally were yelling at me in class, saying that I don't know what I'm talking about. They saw my skin color. Some people knew who my father was. They're like, okay, he's got money. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's doing this. Meanwhile, you know, I've sat here. I've dealt with drugs. You know, I've been to rehab. I've dealt with sexual assault. Like I've, you know, I'm not trying to get pity here. I'm just saying, you know, I to that point, I find it interesting how, you know, we sometimes offend people because of ignorance, but other times people are offending others by assuming ignorance. You know, like when I go into a situation, like say I go to Nigeria, if, I don't know if this is the best example, but if you're assuming that I don't know, or that I'm going to just go in there acting like I'm from Alabama, you know, it's kind of like it's putting people up for failure. It's kind of setting you up to not succeed. I think one of the things that I think kind of applies here is I think we got to let people fail and then correct them in life, not just try to correct up front. When we were in premarital counseling, Alan Wagner told my wife, like, hey, if he's an idiot in public, let him be an idiot in public. When he gets home, then tell him he's an idiot in public. But, you know, or let other people who are there, you know, correct him. Rather than, you know, going into certain situations, just people be like, hey, you know you can't do this, or, you know, you don't know what it's like here. Whereas, you know, you're just assuming that the person doesn't know. Now, if they don't, I mean, sure. I don't know if the missionary example is the best one. But I just think that assuming ignorance is just as much wrong as maybe getting offended out of ignorance, not knowing where people come from.
So what, because I think that takes into, so what gets us past this barrier of, you know, there's someone who is clearly different from me that is part of, let's say, our assembly on a Sunday morning. There's someone who's different from me. What gets us past the barrier that says, okay, I'm not going to say anything to them because I don't want to say anything that might be offensive?
Ask questions. Ask
Exactly.
questions. Be willing to listen.
Okay.
Ask a lot of questions and willing to. You don't know everything and you shouldn't assume anything. I think the attitude really matters, Riley, from what you're saying. You will find one or two people like that would assume and get offended by assumption. But I don't know what they saw in your attitude. I wasn't there.
Yeah.
But if you assume ignorance with the humility to ask questions, and they still behave that way, then the problem is not with you, it's with them.
Like, for example, if you want a real world example here, at one of my previous jobs, there was a coworker of mine. She was black. She was my girl in there. Like we would go in there for months. We had conversations. We both, you know, complained about our bosses, that kind of stuff. I forget what happened, but something in the news happened that was, you know, political and racially, that was on the news. And I had a conversation with her, and we just disagreed. It was just as simple, like we just didn't line up on the issue. She started calling me racist and stuff like that, and I ended up having to go into the office and talking with my bosses because she made that assumption. And I told her while we were there, I was like, how are you, like, you were just fine with me 5 minutes ago, but because I disagree with you on an issue, all of a sudden that's a problem. I think this kind of ties in. It's just like, you know, I feel like we're in this current society in the West is too quick to jump to an extreme. And I think to your point, having conversations, asking questions is where it has to go. Not, you know, getting offended, backing off, shutting that wall up, or putting that wall up, saying, okay, he doesn't exactly 100% align with me. He doesn't understand where I come from, even though he's asked questions. He's not worth my time, or she's not worth my time, that kind of stuff.
I hate this to be Riley, thing, but maybe the timing was off.
Could
At
be.
that point, she was hurt. I do not think that would be a good time to lecture or try to offer an opinion,
Yeah.
because even being married, and you too, there's a time we can bring up issues with our spouses that we just totally off.
That's fair.
That may not be time to tell her what she needs to do, but to listen to what she's heard and where she's coming from.
Yeah, no, I just, yeah.
The whole questions thing, I think, is important because at a time like that is, you know, okay, I see Jesus kind of modeling this in other ways, but the you know, 7 habits of highly effective people. I hate that title. I hate that. But anyway, just the habit of first seek to understand, and then it's like, you know, you seem to be upset about this. Help me to understand. You know, just what. Now, my thought is, the way I read some of the things that were on some of the quiz, was we're just thinking about, man, and just in terms of approaching someone who's, I better not talk to them because I might, so, you're talking about someone that you possibly already had a deeper relationship with, and that's why it was surprising to you how that turned. But, I'm thinking in terms of, do we even, let this be why we don't approach someone who may be different,
Be willing to step out of your comfort zone
Yeah.
and open to listen.
Okay. I'll put listen up with ask questions. What's a good opening gambit question, by the way, for, like, let's say you see the person that you have not seen before, maybe they're different.
Excuse my ignorance.
Connect.
If they don't know anything about Christ.
Okay. That
Assume that-
this may be the back in the days that I grew up in of the meetings. This was our alien sinner. We were all looking for the alien sinners.
Yeah,
Someone who is
a lot of
outside of
times,
Christ. Yeah.
Once you have a conversation with people like that, you realize they can whip you with your own.
Could be, but you might be assumed, hey, this person is here, never seen them before. You might assume they got no connection with Christ or his people.
So-and-so, you may already be here. I don't know if you're a visitor or not.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they may have been coming for months, if not years, and they may, I mean, like,
Yeah, that's it.
I mean, so even, something I was gonna say, that there's a posture of, even if you think you know something, a posture of humility means you're still going to have a posture of learning versus, I mean, so-
I just want to capture that.
like but I mean, if someone has been here, it's like, oh, not why haven't you met me, or why aren't like why haven't I met you
Yeah,
before?
yeah.
Like,
How could I miss you?
do you what times do you come? Like,
Let me make
maybe
sure I make you
they're
feel
nervous.
bad. What? I've never seen you here before. I'm here every Sunday.
Don't you know? I mean, like,
Same seat.
I want to say that maybe the best way to approach everything we think, it would be to approach everything out of love, but we could still, like, even if something's done with good intentions, which is really dangerous, if we do things out of love, it's out of good intentions, but we could still hurt people or harm people, even if we're doing it with the right intentions.
Yeah, I hope not harm, but certainly hurt. Yeah, you can. So this person's come into, we can assume a lot of things. Let me tell you some of the things that the folks who study this say we ought to assume about someone. Here's one of the things. They showed up because they wanted to. There was something about they wanted to be here. Nobody goes to a church meeting in 2023 in the United States of America because they think they have to. Whatever vestiges of that were left, COVID blew that out of the water. If people show up, they have shown up to this place for some reason that has to do with a desire on their part. Questions you might has wrestled with the decision of whether or not to show up.
And they have preconceived ideas about us.
Ding, 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 ding. Yeah, exactly. And you may have just, since consistently research in this country shows that most people think if this person is our alien sinner, they're outside of any relationship with God, Christ, church, whatever. If they've shown up here, chances are part of what they're struggling with is all Christians are bigoted. All Christians are self-focused. All Christians are Trump Republicans. Right, wrong, or indifferent. Call the elders if you need to. But those are the things that most folks who are even in the category of searching for God, those are some of their preconceived notions about Christians these days. And I think you can go a long way towards making them at least kind of rethink some of that stuff if we just open with, hey, I'm just glad you're here. I'm so-and-so, you know. Use your real name, you know. I'm so-and-so.
Could you maybe survey the people who've come to Oliver Creek the last year or so, kind of find out their reasons?
See what that's a good.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be better though? I mean, I'm not certainly not against that, Sharon, but wouldn't it be better if they connect with a couple of people who kind of act, hey, what brought you here today? You know, glad you're here. You know, just can I help you with something? I mean, what brought you here today? Can I help you? You know. I mean, I wouldn't say it this way, but as my students years ago would say, can I help you scratch that itch? You know, what was it about that brought you here today? Yeah, you don't want to use that word, but you know, that was the, you know, that.
It was mentioned in the Les group, I don't know if everybody heard it, but I know Faye's aware of it, but there's a young, a man, not that young, but anyway, there's a couple here because of the sewing ministry that have visited.
Yeah.
In early service. I miss them. I happen to know the wife and she's Catholic and, but he got a port patch or something, is that what, something that the sewing ministry made, and he read the name Oliver Creek on it, and that's why he came. I think that's really.
And how could you know that story? I mean, what would it say if you meet someone like that and they say, well, actually, here's why I'm here today, tells that story. You need to meet, you know, let me take you to meet someone you know in the sewing ministry.
Yeah, Marge.
You know, Marge would be a great start, but I mean, just anybody that's involved.
Right.
They might have been the one that made your, you know, I mean, you know, I think you're kind of creating a human connection there. And now they're no longer, boy, that's a guy that had cancer.
Yeah.
You know, you could label that guy. No, he's a guy that came because he was affected by that.
And they involve themselves in, guess who's coming to dinner? Because they ate at my daughter's house. But we both know the lady. In fact, I know the guy too. I just haven't seen him in years. But anyway, yes. And they were at my daughter Kathy's house with the Roberts. And so, I mean, to me, now that really surprised me, to involve themselves in something that's kind of outside of church, to sign up for it. We
So-
can't get our own people to sign up for things, let alone somebody.
Well, what
that's
does that tell
visiting.
you? What does that tell you?
They're
You're-
looking, you got.
Yeah, because there's someone, you know, I think our thought is someone visits here, oh, let's give them space, you know? And it's like, no. I'm wanting us to change that mindset that we have, because the reality is, if the research is right, and I'm sort of, you know, my debate coach told me follow the facts. Anyway, you know, if the research is right, then nobody just shows up because they feel like they got to check a box. We're way past that as a country. You know? So yeah.
From what I'm hearing, like after the COVID, it seemed like it's been a huge change in time from going to church because you have to. Now people are going to church because the church had to offer something
Yeah.
for them.
Or they're hoping it does. Hoping it does. And my guess is a lot of these people are hoping for some kind of human connection, because that's another thing that the props got kicked out from under during all the isolation. And, you know, that again gets us back to the unity stuff we've been talking about. If they come in here and it is just cold and, you know, just like going to the bank and standing in line kind of thing, who wants to be a part of that?
I mean, I'm thinking with the example, because Kathy told me about that, like this couple that we were just visiting and they signed up for Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. They're not even members here, and they came and just how, because they signed up and came here because of the, he's a patient at West Cancer. It's like, it just makes me think it's so important to live up to some degree to what people think they're gonna get when they come here like that, because if no one I mean, it's a responsibility that if we put our name on something, that we live up to that. So that when someone does come here, they don't walk away going, well, I thought it was gonna be different. And
Yeah.
nobody, this is not what I thought this church was gonna be.
I don't mind if they come away with that, it's different, but if they come away with, I think those people really noticed and cared that I was here.
That's what I mean,
You
it's
know,
like,
yeah.
I mean, it puts a responsibility on me to, if I see someone that I don't know, to actually walk up and greet them, to kind of make some connection with them that, just because if they may have come in because, there's Oliver Creek, great place to come, but then they come here and it's like nobody's talking to them,
Right.
nobody's approaching them, we're not the great place to come.
Right.
We're not living out what Jesus said, because we're not showing it to them right in that moment.
And that, we have not specifically tied that to anything quote-unquote multicultural at this point, other than just go ahead and expand that to say, since our time is limited, does it matter who that person is?
Yeah.
I mean, shouldn't that be our attitude with anyone who comes to our assembly? Even if, they're, even if they've dyed their hair toy boat, their hair purple, do we find some connection that, do we get past our assumptions, have that internal conversation, and then kind of retrain ourselves to think, this person wouldn't be here unless they chose to come here. We're long past the days when, people are driving by, oh, there's a church, I should pull in. Unless our plan for outreach is to keep praying that we wake up tomorrow and it's 1954, that's not gonna happen. So the reality is, when someone has shown up, make their presence. If you like me, little pretty. Any one of the vulnerable next week.
Last one,
The last one, okay?
my opinion.
Okay. Anybody want to nominate? I'm not against it. I'm just saying. Anyone got another one that you're burning in your spirit?